Alrighty, how's it going, everybody? Welcome to another BioDevils podcast, and today I'm joined by a number of different guests. We have one running late, possibly, I think. We'll see what happens if they're able to make it. But for the guests that are here, let's go ahead and introduce them. So you all know me as BioDevil Dom, but I'm followed up here by Daybreaker Rein. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? Been a while since I've been on one of these, so looking forward to this discussion.
Yeah.
As always.
Absolutely, yep. After that, we got Mr. DevilHunterJames. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
I will not do the fade joke again, but it is me.
You're never letting that die, are you?
You loved it.
They
loved it.
Yeah.
Everyone loved it.
I loved it because it was stupid.
You're gonna make me sound. You're gonna make me sound like a former president. Goddammit.
Damn right. Alrighty. Up next, we got Mr. Drillbit. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Oh, hey everyone. So, yeah, this should be exciting.
Yep. After that, we got Mr. Gamma.
The time has come, and so have I.
Yep. After that, we got a Mr. Iveega. I'm surprised he's even here and playing games because he's Amish.
That's not Singh.
Dog.
That's not Singh.
You're calling me Canadian?
No, I said you were Amish.
I was talking to James.
Saying you're Canadian and you play no games.
Damn, Singh, defend yourself.
Fuck you. You haven't gotten to it.
Why do I even bother?
Wow.
Well, since you're talking, Singh, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
I am being held here against my will. Please save me.
Finally, you on the
in fact,
podcast.
Yep, and last but not least, we have Mr. Kaneki. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
I'm too busy playing Tekken 3D on my 3DS right now because I cannot buy it legally. Thanks, Nintendo. Good job. Good job.
Wait,
Oh.
did they even sell it on the 3DS store?
I'm not paying $150 for that. No, thank you.
Well,
Yeesh.
even if it was on the quote-unquote 3DS store, you can't buy it now because that store is dead and gone at this point. So,
Rest in peace.
R.I.P.
yeah. Man, imagine me
actually,
trying to get a fucking copy of Project Cross Zone 2 now. Impossible.
Good luck paying a shitload of money.
Yeah. But that being said, with all the introductions out of the way, if our last guest shows up, they'll go ahead and introduce themselves. If not, then, they'll hopefully make it to the next one. But we'll go ahead and continue from here. So question number one, there are several ways to play old games these days. What is your favorite way to play old games? So who wants to go first on this one?
I can go first on that one. It's pretty simple for me. Like, I mostly prefer playing on original hardware, but I don't mind playing through other ways as well. But if it's available, it's original hardware.
Yeah, I was gonna piggyback off of that, saying that old hardware is great, but nowadays, since old hardware is considered to be expensive and you can't find it anywhere, most people will have to emulate it. Or, as mentioned before, it's like there's Nintendo on Switch Online, there's PlayStation Plus, Premium and Extra. That way, they have games like, example, Resident Evil, the original one, or Director's Cut, excuse me, as well as Ape Escape. But honestly, I prefer emulators. Just because it's more convenient.
I prefer emulators, especially when it's done by the fans, as evidence. Since we're getting, it's because everybody knows my beef on this. Sony messed up Ape Escape 2 so badly. Is a
Here.
glitchy, messy
Here.
piece of crap. Doesn't have a platinum.
Oh,
They don't even
get me
have the
started.
correct audio. They have the. I mean, it's English, but it's the
UK.
They based
It's the
it off
UK audio.
port. Yeah.
Yeah, which it's just a mess. Like, I like when companies try to do old stuff, but man, sometimes they just cannot nail it, and it's up to the fans to do it correctly.
Well, definitely hold that thought for later too, because we're gonna talk about problems.
Yeah, I was gonna leave it at that.
Yeah, with modern emulation and stuff like that, and modern backwards compatibility.
But yeah, I would say whatever the best version is, whether it's official or emulated, whatever works for me.
Mm. Anybody else before I go?
GOG. GOG has a really good. It's really good for playing older games. Like, it's one of the only places I can play on PC that can let me play Metal Gear Solid 1.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right. They do let you do that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Go
I
to
did not know this.
Still waiting for them to put on MGS2 back onto the market, but still
What
waiting.
was the
Not for
reason
you.
for that?
Licensing issues.
Ah, okay.
It
It
was
was some
specifically, I think, with real footage that they
Yeah.
snuck in.
it was the historical footage that they couldn't do anything about yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was
It's a
gonna
weird
say.
thing.
Yeah, they said
I
they
was
were
gonna
working
say.
on relisting them, but it's been a while since they've made that announcement.
Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah. I was gonna say, like, for me, it's always been like old hardware as much as I can, even to the point of trying to like keep up consoles and even going for like the the more improved ones. Like I remember like there's the ones from Analog that are really good, like the Analog NT for Super Nintendo, and also I know there was like HD mods like for Dreamcast, but it's expensive.
Yeah, and
But you can pay other people to do it.
yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up too, because we'll like definitely talk a little bit about that as well. Definitely in terms of like our thoughts on like video upscaling, because that's like a whole whole different like like area of like video upscaling that is interesting. It's very different because it doesn't require you to necessarily purchase like a individual box that just works per se, but again we'll get into that. Did
Like,
Kaneki or Singh wanna go?
I'll go last.
Okay.
In my case, I usually just try to go with whichever option is the most convenient and convenient through legal means. But though if I can't do that, obviously, then I'm gonna have to sail the seven seas on that one.
Yeah. For
Smart
me,
answer.
if for me, it's a thing of I prefer playing on the original as much as I possibly can. Only because like I like being able to utilize my old consoles and stuff like that. But also part of it is just because of the fact that with these more modern consoles, they don't really do backwards compatibility the way that they used to.
Or at all in some cases.
Yeah, or at all. And
Sorry.
there's no way to like have your stuff like attached on like a separate like attachment for the console via an accessory. And as far as like just plug and play devices, like yeah, they're out there, but not for every particular console that might exist. Like I would love it if there was a way to play Dreamcast games on something a little bit more modern, but you can't do it.
yeah, we were almost close to getting it for original Xbox, but it fell through.
Yeah, and even then too, like I think about like okay, well, like I have a GB operator from Epilogue, and that's a fantastic little device if you want to play Game Boy games on your PC because it emulates the games right off of the cart. So stuff like that, I love stuff like that. So I'm not necessarily against emulation either. But if I ever really have a choice, it's mostly like let me play it off of the actual hardware, and if the hardware is backwards compatible, let me play the games off of the console that it's backwards compatible, because it doesn't make sense for me to hold on to every single console if I can play it on something that is more or less it's a all-in-one machine type of deal, if that makes sense.
Well, you do gotta know which works with what. because
Yeah.
like the Xbox ones have weird quirks because the 360 doesn't work with all games, or they have glitches.
Yeah, there's a whole compatibility list with that on the original Xbox, and
You
then
can't you can remove it with the JTAG console, but it doesn't work with every game.
right. Um, well, and then let's also not forget too with like the Xbox One and Series X, they're only backwards compatible with the specific list that was more or less like I guess a- approved by publishers and developers that worked with Microsoft in order to have those games run at better frame rates and higher resolutions, or target frame rates, I should say.
It's a damn shame they stopped.
For sure.
Yeah. Alrighty. So Kaneki, you wanted to go, correct?
Yep. Well, I was a bit before when all this was popping with emulators. I was saying, you know what? When it's available on the, at least modern hardware, because God forbid if I never even have a PS2, I am not gonna pay. I don't know how much they're selling for PS2s. Maybe over 200. If you want it in very good condition, I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not gonna do that. No.
For
I
But
stepped away for a sec. Did we change questions yet?
no, we're still on question one
No,
because
no.
Kaneki
No,
just started.
Kaneki's answering.
Okay.
but
You said
when it's
for
possible,
PS2s, right?
well, not
Yeah.
just PS2s, any old hardware in general. Uh,
Honestly,
some.
my
Yeah.
oh, I was gonna interject and say, honestly, my best advice is look at stuff like Facebook Marketplace, Mercari, eBay. Basically, just be aware of what the prices are and what people are selling.
eBay, I'll do. Facebook, no. Even if the marketing for Facebook is decent, I'm not letting that site ever, not touching that site ever again. But whenever it's available on modern hardwares like the Xbox, PlayStation, Switch, or even on the PC, with, for example, the Quake remaster. I like how Night Dive just, re-releases old games and new graphics, or sometimes updated graphics with higher visuals, and multiplayer. And what is
And
it? They release
also
them like $10. Like that's how you do it.
and also expansions too. They actually include Quake 64 as an expansion.
Yeah, stuff like that, like releasing old games and adding new stuff to it with expansions. That I don't mind paying for, but a lot of companies lately don't want to do that, which leads me to, the ultimate answer. I would prefer much emulators over, original hardware, because they really don't want me to play my old, let's say for example, my old PlayStation 1 games onto my PS5, because I don't want to pay premium to play my old games. Like, no. Same goes with Nintendo Switch. I don't want to pay. I don't want to keep paying NSO to even play GBA games now. If you all are not aware of that,
Yeah.
That's stupid.
it's really stupid. But yeah, I'm done.
Alrighty. So since everyone's kind of gone through question number one, do you want to read off number two here for me, Kaneki?
Yeah, I got you. Um, Number two, backwards compatibility is a feature that unfortunately hasn't been as great as it once was. That's true. What are some of the things you wish modern backwards compatibility was capable of? Uh, the basics, like simply playing our old games without accessing to online. Because don't get me wrong, the way Xbox did it, they tried. Out of all the companies, Xbox did tried with their backwards compatibility with what they can, with the publishers. However, my only flaw with that is the fact that it's tied to the Xbox, they're on the store and the online. So
Yeah.
even if one day they decided, hey, let's shut down the Xbox, the servers, I can't play original Xbox or 360 games backwards compatible, because it's all in this server they're locking it in, and that is unfortunate.
Yeah.
They're slowly trying to fix that because they did fix this with Xbox One, where
Mhm.
you can now play Xbox One games through your Series X without needing to go online, but they still need to fix it for old games like the 360 games.
Yeah, and I think like going off of that too, it's like Microsoft, like I think their idea of backwards compatibility, in my opinion, was always great in that like okay they work with the publishers and the developers and they try to get these games to work properly on their new hardware. And if you have the original disc for those games, it's just getting that install code basically available to you for free. And if you don't
Yep.
have it, then you could just get it off of their storefront, which is great. The only drawback to that system is that it's not one, it's not for every original Xbox game, and it's not for every original Xbox 360 game. And two, there's no way to play your games, at least officially, right, with the original disc without having any updates. If, say, like the publisher or developer is just no longer in business and nobody actually holds the no major company holds the rights to like specific games or franchises that people might want to play that they happen to have like physical copies of, right? So like I think
Right.
like yeah, Microsoft's is great. It's just that's the major flaw with that one. Then of course we got like Sony, for example, right, where it's like as you mentioned before too, Kaneki, where it's like okay, well like yeah, there are these games that we got from PlayStation 3 back on the or PlayStation Portable if you got them off of there from those digital libraries, but again, it's limited to digital. And the other thing too is that some of those games you can't even get even if you've paid for them back on the PS3 because they lock them behind premium. So like I can't play Tekken 2 or Resident Evil Director's Cut, which technically Resident Evil Director's Cut is not necessarily the same SKU, but I still technically paid for it, and I should, in theory, have the right to have that game, but I can't because I'm not paying for a ridiculous price for a subscription base that's, in my opinion, not really worth it.
Exactly. I was going to say, like, for PlayStation Premium, if you want to play games from PS3, even though you own them, you have to stream them.
Yeah.
Because cloud streaming is the future, even though nobody asked for it.
Nobody asked for it, and it's not good. It's not stable. It's just a lot of issues.
Hi,
with
Stadia.
the console
Goodbye,
that's dead.
Stadia.
Wah, wah.
Yeah, it's just really bad. I think like what I would want out of modern backwards compatibility is just, hey, like for like the PS5 for example, like for PlayStation 3 games, just let me fucking slap in my disc or download my games that I have digitally off of that storefront. Because I think it would just be way more convenient to be able to do that. Same thing with like PlayStation 1 games and PlayStation 2 games that are digital, at least on that storefront, because I could understand if those physical discs aren't available. Because as I mentioned earlier, like if I could have an all-in-one machine, right, then that's what I would prefer as far as playing on actual hardware. I would have virtually almost no reason to need a video upscaler if backwards compatibility was actually good and there were ways to play like this old stuff way easier and for way more affordable prices. But I'll get into that a little bit later.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say is that it would be nice to just have the ability to have options like being able to use your discs or download it from the store,
Mhm.
and also have enhancements. I know PS back on PS2 you could smooth out games and even increase loading times. But I imagine because of how old the hardware is getting, that it's just getting very hard to try to make sure that these consoles have it natively and without resorting to emulation. So yeah, not every game. Sadly, I don't think every game will ever be fully playable without having real hardware on it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it sucks for the Switch people because, no discs.
Well, I can bully
Oh,
on them
yeah.
a little bit. Do you have any idea
I
how
mean-
much I wanted the GameCube to be like backwards compatible with the Switch?
Yeah, well,
Like,
Why won't they do it?
well,
It's
I
well,
cartridge-based.
it wouldn't.
it's cartridge based, and I think
Yeah.
that they also scrapped the idea for a virtual console for the GameCube,
Well,
if I
Yeah.
remember. But they got the N64 emulators. You got the NES, SNES, but nothing for the GameCube yet. I also feel
Well,
really
yeah,
bad for people who have a Wii U, because that's the only way you can play like Twilight Princess HD and Wind Waker HD. It's not even on the Switch
yeah,
yet.
until they port it. So yeah, unless I doubt companies are ever gonna port everything, because who's gonna ever wanna like port like the old Spider-Man games on PS3 with how much legal issues there are? You just have to hold on to those discs or just use an emulator.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Well, and going off of that too, it's like, well, you have games that have like licensing issues for stuff that they might have been using, like real life tracks or the likenesses of actors and stuff like that. So that doesn't help. And it's also just kind of like this unfortunate thing, like with like how like Nintendo doesn't stick with a consistent like physical format. They always have to change and stick with some kind of gimmick. Granted, like I'm sure it wouldn't be an issue to play those like miniature GameCube discs on a regular like player if they had the tech for it. Because if I'm not mistaken, that's how they were doing it on the Wii. But like,
Yeah, it just needed a disc reader.
yeah, like if there was
Well,
like an
the
attachment
Wii was
or
just the Wii was just built with GameCube tech in mind.
right, but I'm just saying like that disc reader also takes in like regular sized discs, right? It's not like it's
It also has to do with the fact that GameCube and Wii were on Power PC, while the Switch is on an ARM and NVIDIA tech.
Yeah, so it's yeah, it just makes you wonder like how these companies don't really think about preserving their stuff when it comes to like backwards compatibility, because if there's no way to play your old stuff based on the format of the physical media, and you're not giving people the option to get it digitally, then companies like Nintendo, I don't think really should be surprised that people start looking into emulation or making their own more or less like emulation consoles. I'll say, like, for lack of a better term.
If you're not going to give it to us, what else can we do?
Yeah.
I mean, look at Earthbound.
Yarhar.
Do you know how many people emulated
No.
Earthbound before they finally ported it?
No. Yeah, but also look at Mother 3. A lot of people were asking for Mother 3 to come out, and yet that's still not out. Reggie is still haunted by that question.
It's still in the hands of the fans right now, as far as I'm aware.
Even though
Honestly.
well, I was gonna say, even though the creator or the person that did the fan translation actually handed it over to Nintendo and be like, hey, you could put this in the game, it is accurate. Just everyone in America could get it, but they still haven't done anything with it. Even though they have the power to do so, they just don't care. I.e. ban Nintendo.
All right. Did anybody else want to go on number 2 before we move on?
Yeah, just real quick. I mean, obviously, I think a lot of the sentiments that have already been voiced, I agree with. In a perfect world, I would love that these newer iterations of consoles that come out are backwards compatible with the older stuff in some capacity.
Yeah.
Another alternative would be that Nintendo has already shown that there is an interest for clone consoles, if you will, with their mini series. So it almost would be interesting to see if these companies, instead of leaving it to fan creations and stuff like that, if they would actually make legitimately licensed like old versions of these consoles. so people could, get a more modern version of the console, maybe with some, slice of life features like HDMI upscaling and stuff like that. With it not being so ridiculously inaccessible, because with the way the retro market is now, it's insane to buy old consoles most of the time. Especially if you start factoring in like the upscaling stuff, that's a whole freaking bunch of additional charges, as well as just even getting the games that you want. So you're going to be spending a good chunk of change just for a few minor things. So it would be really interesting to see if these companies would maybe take it into their own hands and start making ways for people to play their old games, but through legal means. So there's not this, gray area through emulation. Not that I'm against emulation at all. I'm a big proponent of emulation, but it would just be, I think it would be more optimal. And obviously I think people would actually probably buy it,
So, real quick before I let you guys go on that, I just wanted to kind of interject and say that your thought process is kind of similar to mine in that I kind of would like to see these companies maybe take advantage of doing something like that too, where it's hey, maybe it's not going to play the physical media per se, but at least you have this quote unquote mini console. You put up an online storefront, right? Because I think that's the major issue with these minis, is that you only get a set amount of games and they basically choose those games, right? Put on onboard memory, right? Because it's not like these companies can't do it now. It's almost like the market for, even if it is niche, is there. They're just not capitalizing on it.
Yeah, I was going to mention that as well, because what Daybreaker was mentioning, they've done this before, like with the NES Classic, SNES Classic, PlayStation Classic, even the Genesis had this too, but it wasn't all the games though. It was just a select few, like the hit title, Mario RPG, Earthbound, the old Mario, Duck Hunt, and then the same thing with Sega, has all the classics on it, but it's not what they were wanting, and it's hard to come across these days. And I do agree, they should implement an online storefront for it. If they actually did that, it would be great. That way old collectors can be like, I have this now, it's part of my collection. Will they ever open it? Probably not.
It's and it's a good point that you guys are making as far as the price, because I had recently I won a bid for a PlayStation Portable 2000 recently. Nice. And that's a handheld that really piqued my interest because of some of the games that are playable on it, and also just because I found out recently that you can hook up a component cable to it, and I'm like, oh shit, that sounds like it'd be really fun to do with my RetroTink 5X.
Very useful.
So it's that stuff is getting pricey. Getting a boxed PSP, not necessarily that it's expensive in American currency, but given that I'm not in America anymore, shit has gotten very expensive that would otherwise be very affordable. So this PSP, which I won for a $77 bid, which also came with some Japanese games, mind you, not in the greatest condition at all. So I do have to probably replace the shell on it eventually with the stick. It's not pricey for people even overseas, where it's it might be affordable now for some people, say in America or in a different country, but then when you start looking into okay, there are people that collect retro games not just in America or not just in Japan. They probably do it all over, right? And those prices are going to vary, and depending on their currency, it's you're possibly going to be shit out of luck based on your currency, right?
Absolutely. And especially if you're getting it from Japan or an outworld country, import tax is a bitch.
Yeah, so anyway, before we really divulge and somehow do this doc without reading off these other questions, why don't we have Daybreaker read off number 3 here?
Sure. Emulation is a popular way to play old games, especially if they're rare, hard to get a hold of, or even limited print. With that in mind, as good as emulation has become over the years, it's not perfect and it may not always be legal. How would you like to see emulation be improved upon? Note, legality varies by country and how the law is exercised also varies. Um, emulation has really come a long way. Like it is like leaps and bounds where it was in just a few years too. It feels like that there's been a lot of progress made, but then at the same time there are emulators that don't really exist on the market, such as like original Xbox. For example, there's really not a decent emulator out there to play original Xbox games. So for me, I think it would be interesting. There's a lot of really talented people who make these emulators, who are obviously very passionate about the work that they do and the way of offering a way to play these games, through these programs that they make. So it'd really be interesting. I think it would almost be beneficial for some of these companies if they were really wanting to kind of going back a little bit to the backwards compatibility aspect. You look at like the PS1 Classic, it was an absolute flippin' failure on all levels. Like it was a very, very poorly thought out, rushed out product just to capitalize on the whole mini craze because Nintendo did it, so obviously there's a market for this. So I think it would almost be kind of in the best interest of some of these companies if they want to do stuff like that, or even add emulation to their existing consoles, that they bring in some of these people who are working on these emulators, like DuckStation, for example. Like, get the guy from DuckStation to, you want a really good PS1 emulator, you want to redo the mini and have it be just a freaking hit in the knock out of the park. Get the guy who made DuckStation, bring him in and have him work on the emulator for you.
Yeah.
I think he's helping with the PS2 emulator right now, actually.
Yes, they are.
Really?
Yes, he is.
That's awesome.
Nice.
The GOAT.
Nice.
That man's a goat.
That's why, that's why I call it the Duck Station 2 now, because he's now part of the project. So, and I'm not gonna lie, he has improved a lot with the PS2 emulator.
The fact that it updates itself now instead of me having to find like the next build to download. Thank God.
Oh yeah, that's super nice.
Yeah. The one thing that I have noticed, like when it comes to emulation, not just emulation, but anytime someone makes a fan project of any game, they try to do it with Mario 64, Legend of Zelda. Every single time they get cease and desists just because you're using our property. We don't like this. I just wish that companies could have some leeway, like give these people a chance. Stop shutting down shit. Because this has happened before with emulation.
Even Sega. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, like, when Nintendo was going after all these emulator sites, and it's like, oh, you tried to download it? Yeah, shut this shit down. Cease and desist.
Even Sega was like that at one point until I forgot what year, but even Sega had like a change heart of mind, and hence why.
Shining Force?
What?
Because I do remember this shit. They were going after people for doing like Shining Force videos.
It was Shining Force and an unreleased Golden Axe game they was gonna make, but then they canceled it.
There's one other example on that, Kaneki.
What's up?
Streets of Rage remake.
Oh yeah, they did went after those people, but I think it was because Streets of Rage remake. I want to say that was their last straw. I could be wrong. Somewhere in 2016, even Sega themselves changed their heart and mind because of how people were doing so many Sonic ROM hacks. They hired one of the most well-known Sonic ROM hack guys to do Sonic Mania and turn that into like a 9, 10 out of 10 game that people wanted from Sega in terms of Sonic games for years.
Oh yeah, you're another goat, Tyson Hesse, the guy that did like what was it, Arms, Nipples the Enchilada, that parody comic. If it wasn't for that, he stepped his way right into the door. If it wasn't for him as well, Sonic's design for the movie would still be the shitty original one that they had.
Yeah.
Just saying.
So, like, in regards to emulation, like, I think, like Daybreaker, you mentioned like, yeah, well, like there really isn't like a good Xbox emulator out there, right? And to my understanding, with like the original Xbox, it's very much in its like early infancy, where they finally figured out like just how it's supposed to work and how to really emulate the thing. But even then, it's like still it's still a thing that's going to take time for them to actually fully figure out and understand. And I think that's mostly due to the hardware that the original Xbox was really built upon, since that console is more or less like a PC. So it's like, how do you emulate a PC, so to speak, right? And yeah, like I do agree that there's like knowing that there's like emulation out here. There's a bunch of different people that like really put their hearts and souls into these emulators, and really working to make sure that they that they work, and that people are able to play the games that they know and love for for free, because there is no way to, or there's no really consistent backwards compatibility. There is no like effort from these companies to preserve their old libraries, and I think that's where a lot of people would argue where emulation is very important, because preservation is such an important thing, especially when you take into account, aside from like how these companies treat preserving their old games, longevity of actual physical media. Because while I prefer collecting physical media has one very critical flaw, and that is things like, well, if we're talking about disc rot, and other sorts of damage that could occur to physical media that may make that piece of physical media forever unplayable. But at the same time, when I think about like, okay, how cool emulation is, there is also that issue of like, well, it isn't always necessarily legal, and some countries may enforce the law more strictly than others. For instance, and probably why Nintendo likes to go after a lot of content creators, and like just these teams or individuals that work on emulation or like fan creations and stuff like that, simply because of the fact that in Japan it is illegal to emulate and use their properties for original works, even if you aren't making any sort of money out of it.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah. So it's so you can imagine how much of a hassle that is, just trying to jump through those hoops and hurdles.
Yeah.
I
Same
mentioned
thing with. Oh, go ahead.
real quick. I mentioned the GB operator earlier too. Really fucking awesome device. If you want to talk about like playing your old Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance games, like it literally is just hook it up to via the USB cable. You hook it up to your PC and just boot up the emulation software and just plop in a game, and there you go. You're ready to play. You could back up your saves. You can, as far as I've heard too, you can actually use that little device as a way to develop your own original Game Boy games, which I thought was really fucking cool. Thinking about that. And aside from that, you could also overwrite the data on Game Boy cards if it's rewritable. And another really cool thing about that, and this is why I kind of wish there were more devices like this, is that it will tell you if your cart is an original print or if it's a reprint or a bootleg, which is really cool. Like, we don't have a whole lot of devices like that, and I really wish that there were more. Like, if there was something like that for like the PlayStation 2 or even like the PlayStation 1 or even the Dreamcast, like I would be all over that. Hell, even the PSP. Like, I feel like there needs to be a consoleized PSP.
That'd be sick.
I agree. It's like there's so many things out there. It's like you were mentioning about the like disc rot for physical. Same thing can be said about digital. Like any games that are out there, it's digital. Sooner or later, it will be taken off of the digital storefront with no reason at all.
Yeah.
Either because licenses were expired and they had to remove it, or other reasons.
This is why I want companies to just have the option to just download the game onto your system.
Yeah. And if it goes away, you can still download it. Like if you just delete it because you need to get space, and all of a sudden it's like, I hadn't played this game in forever. You go back, hey, it's there. Like Steam. Steam does that. Until they change things, but I don't know anything about that. But
So they delist it.
yeah, that's the problem.
Mhm.
But I was also thinking that there recently, it's like speaking of like all this happening, because we already mentioned like the eShop for the not Switch, but for the 3DS and the Wii U got defunct. It's now gone. There was a content creator that actually bought all the games on 3DS and Wii U, and he donated it to like the historical archives, so that way it could be preserved.
You remember how much you spent on it?
He spent like close altogether. I think he spent close to like 30 grand.
I think it was like 23 grand.
23. Okay, so I'm dead wrong. But yeah,
Close. You're close.
completionist is doing God's work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean,
Isn't that kind of
funny
fun,
because it's funny because apparently the whole Wii U eShop in total was like only like maybe 2 or 3 terabytes, which is like what, 5 Call of Duty games?
yeah,
Right? Yeah.
yeah, 5 modern Call of Duty games, you could say, considering how much fucking space they take up.
Oh, it was
Mhm.
1.5
No,
terabytes,
it's
I
2
remember.
COD games. Let's be real.
Yeah.
Also, Dom, there is a way to emulate PC. It's called Virtual Machine.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, because like I was just saying more so in regards to like the original Xbox, why it's so hard to emulate is because the architecture is so much like a PC's. So that's why it's taken so long for people to even figure out just like how it even generally is supposed to work as a console and how it gets its games to work and stuff like that. But yeah, like yeah. Anyway, when I think about like the emulation, it's more so just being able to like preserve this stuff. Because without the ability to preserve it, it's like, you know, how else are you gonna play this game? Like you might hear about it, and there's no other way to play it because it's hard to get. There's no reprints coming out, because that's another thing too. It's there's no company out there. There's no company or group of people out there going out of their way to reprint games, getting the permission from these companies and publishers that own the rights to these games to reprint them for a small amount of time. And I'm not talking about like stuff like limited run. I mean like actually reprinting old games, as opposed to, oh, okay, well we made a limited print for a digital game, and by the way, fuck you if you didn't go to the event. Yeah, I'm throwing shade at limited run. So
I think that's in the norm.
Good lad.
So which sucks too, because I've purchased stuff from limited run. I
have to.
You know, but yeah, but yeah, and then like, you know, when I think about like you know, like certain other consoles too, or handhelds even, right? It's like there's got to be a way to like preserve that stuff and even like emulate the tech even from like a hardware perspective, because like when you make these, you know, quote unquote clone consoles, in a way it is emulating. You're just emulating off of a very dedicated piece of hardware, right? So it's something that like I wish, you know, I hope that it, like, if it, you know, if it's good now, right, like I hope it gets even better, because the only other issue that like emulation has is that sometimes the games that you want to emulate aren't perfect. They might run into some issues from a performance standpoint or technical standpoint, and you just can't run the game due to bad performance. But that stuff, generally, as far as I'm aware, gets fixed over time as well.
Yeah, like that happens because there are some emulators that can upscale. Sometimes it's good, sometimes maybe not.
But really quick, isn't that just so fucked of Nintendo just to delist the entire eShop though?
Yeah. I think it's also pretty fucked that
Mhm.
Sony doesn't support purchases on the PlayStation Portable.
Mm-hmm.
And then Nintendo followed that
Yeah.
with 3DS.
Yeah, the thing
Or-
is that those systems have been long delisted for now, so they probably just don't see it worth the money to keep them open anymore.
It
See,
is to me, damn it.
so like while that's a fair point, that also kind of goes back into that argument of preservation, and regardless of whether or not they're making enough money on it, they should leave those shops open for people that might want to purchase that stuff in the future, even if it is only like 0.001%. It's still an option available to people that might want to be able to go on those storefronts. As far as I'm aware, you can at least make PSP purchases through the PlayStation 3 shop, so at least there is a workaround technically, and there are some digital PSP games available on the PS Vita. So it is nice that there are technically workarounds, but having those storefronts open is like that was the whole reason why people were up in arms about it when it came to them talking about shutting down the PS3 and the PlayStation Vita stores as well.
There's also a small library for the PSP games on Vita.
Yeah.
Like, it's not the entire library.
Can we get an F in the chat for the storefronts we lost?
Yeah. Big ol'
Is the
F.
Vita storefront still up?
Vita storefront
Yes.
is still
Yes.
For
up.
now.
Okay,
It is.
yeah, for now.
Time will
That's
tell.
The strange thing, and I was just on my Vita, but the strange thing is that not every PSP game that is available digitally is available on the Vita, even though they are listed as compatible with the Vita. And my understanding of it is that it's basically something to do with the licensing for the companies, where they might not have given the green light for them to be on the Vita storefront because they just didn't care enough for them to be on that storefront, even though they're technically compatible with that hardware. And I've heard that apparently, like, there are some games where, like, if you are able to download it, you could transfer it somehow from like your PS3, and I've tried looking into it earlier today, but I didn't have any luck with it. So either I'm doing it incorrectly, or there is some slight misinformation going around about it.
Oh, forgot to bring. There was some games that I don't like. Where I understand, but there are some games where you need a mad beefy PC specs just to get it even run properly. MGS4, for example.
Ooh.
That is a big
That's
boy game to
rough.
emulate.
It's still locked to the PS3, right?
Yeah.
That movie is
Jesus,
hard to
It's,
get.
That's a big boy.
That's a long movie.
yeah, it's a long movie, but like I'd be fucking lying to you if I said the gameplay wasn't good when you do actually get to play it.
It's better than Death Stranding.
Aw.
There you go.
Let's get an F in the chat for Death Stranding, and then we'll just throw it out for Cliff.
All right. Any final thoughts on number 3 before we move on to number 4 here?
I said my piece. I'm good.
Singh, you've been kind of quiet. You got anything else to say?
It's kind of hard when everyone's already made the points I would have thought of. It's just.
You can always add more.
I'm trying to save myself for some of the later questions
All right.
because I have a lot to say about some of them.
All right. Well, since we're all good here on number 3, do you want to read off number 4 for me then?
I do that at least. So, number 4. For years, people have always looked for ways on how to properly upscale retro games on modern displays with modern resolutions. Ultimately, it boils down to either modding your consoles to have HDMI compatibility or using a video upscaler such as a FrameMeister, OSSC, or RetroTink, neither of which are affordable endeavors. How would you like to see video upscaling improved or changed?
If you want to
Doesn't
go for
hurt to
it.
have more options available. That's pretty much all it boils down to.
Yeah.
And with more options available, it gives more incentive to have lower prices just for competition's sake. So that kind of helps out with the affordability aspect. But I guess it really depends on how much of a market there is.
Okay, so my whole thing with it is that I like video upscaling. Hence why I have a RetroTink 5X. The main problem that I ran into when I was looking for a way to actually play my old consoles but have them look good on like a modern display and look good in like capture footage, because that was the one thing that I've always wanted to have was good looking PS2 capture footage, for example, because like I would always see people like have great footage on YouTube and I'm just like, well, how do you do it? Because I'm clearly doing it wrong, right? And initially what I was doing is I was getting like a bunch of component to HDMI converters, and while those aren't necessarily bad, they're not great, especially when we're talking about like the PlayStation 2 specifically. They're just not that good. If you were gonna use it for like maybe like an original Xbox, yeah, maybe you could get away with it. But like a PS2, like that's where what I was playing the most is like, okay, yeah, it's just not cutting it. And initially I started with like an OSSC, but OSSC is great for an original Xbox, great for a Dreamcast, probably really good for like a GameCube or even like modded, not even necessarily modded consoles, but consoles that use like component adapters. I think like the Sega Saturn is like one of those consoles that does that. And I know like certain consoles like the NES and SNES, you can mod them to take advantage of like RGB stuff. So OSSC is not necessarily bad, but when you pair it with a very specific console, like I would, you don't always get the greatest results. And I know Daybreaker, he can tell you all about how fucking ridiculously expensive the FrameMeister was back when it was relevant.
Oh god, yeah, and it still is because they don't produce it anymore.
Yeah.
Oh no.
So FrameMeister is it was considered to be like one of the best video upscalers. Although it is being, from my understanding, overtaken by things like the RetroTink, simply because of the fact that the RetroTink can do just about everything it can do and kind of slightly better. So yeah, and that's where I'll gush about the fucking RetroTink 5X all day, 24/7, because it is, of all the products that I've went through over a decade, let's say, no product has served me as well as this little box. So like, I fucking love this thing. It's great. Problem is the price, and as far as I know, Mike Chi, the guy that made the RetroTink, is working on a 4K RetroTink. Boy, would I fucking love to own one. I just know it's gonna cost like $500 fucking dollars.
More than likely,
Jesus.
yeah.
So
You can get a PS5 with that.
right. So it's like this is kind of the reason why I even wrote the question to begin with. Is like, yeah, like the video upscaling stuff's cool, but it's also very fucking pricey, and you have to really consider, is it something that that you're willing to invest your money into for the long term. I personally felt like it was worth my investment just because I like playing a lot of my old games and I like playing on physical hardware. But for most people, that's just not an option, and they'd rather have something that might be, somewhere around the range of like $50 max when you really think about it. So, and I think that's the biggest issue with video upscaling currently is just lack of very affordable prices. And I think Singh, you also mentioned too, just if there were more options available, then maybe those prices would start scaling down to be more reasonable. But as of right now, it's just not something that is.
Yeah, at that point, you might as well just go and find a CRT, maybe at a yard sale, and then just play it that way.
You could, but then CRTs also cost quite a bit, so it's like, you really
Depends on the
Unless you get
CRT.
lucky.
Yeah, so
But I guess I'm lucky to still keep the one that I've had since I was a kid, and that my parents haven't thrown away.
yeah, so it's like I said, I'll fucking gush about the RetroTink 5X all day, every day. It's a fucking awesome little device. If you want to play your like PlayStation 2, Dreamcast, GameCube, anything that you could hook it up to, basically, it's awesome for that because you can get it to upscale those games properly into 1440p, and they just look absolutely crisp and clean, exactly how they should be looking like on a modern monitor. Obviously, it's not making those games HD per se, but it is upscaling them properly in a way where they're just not getting stretched out and not losing picture quality and stuff like that. And so that's the again, the major drawback is that if that price wasn't so bad on a lot of like the devices like that, then I think more people would get into it. But this is also why a lot of people would argue, well, I could just emulate it. Right? Or would prefer, hey, if it's backwards compatible, I'll just slap the disc or cartridge, depending on what it is, into the console that accepts it, and just
Me on both.
just move on about my day. So
And me, I am abstaining because I don't have any.
For me, I usually do playing old games on PC, so I usually just find workarounds to see like the game Gun.
yeah,
Good game.
That game does not go to 1080p, let alone 1440. So I had to go find something like a file online just to get that shit up to 1080p at a proper resolution.
Never mind, bad game.
That's fine. It's just it did take a bit of work. I did wish that more companies like GOG would look into games like that for Gun, or at least for just
absolutely.
games like that. Just more simpler solutions.
yeah.
I agree.
Probably just add to, I don't have the RetroTink 4X myself. I have the RetroTink 2X, which was the device prior to the 5X, obviously, and I also have the RetroTink multi-format, which is another device, and that one was more specifically so I could upscale my PS2 without really any issues. And I do agree, the biggest crux for a lot of upscaling, and guys like Avalanche Reviews, Jared over at Avalanche Reviews will tell you the same thing, is just price. It really comes down to what you're willing to spend and what exactly it is that you're looking for. Like it's nice that devices like the RetroTink 2X, and even the RetroTink Mini, will serve the purpose of upscaling, at a much discounted price if that's all you're looking for. If you're just looking to play on a modern TV, that's the way to go. But, for people who want to stream it, or record it, in various aspects, it's going to cost a pretty penny. And I would love to see that change, that the price of admission is not so expensive. Especially with just so many devices currently on the market. If other devices come around, hopefully we will see some of these devices start to dip a little bit in price because there's other options. And even too, it would be nice, kind of going back to like what I was said, if like some of these companies would remake consoles with HDMI support that's just built in natively, that's a freaking godsend. Because like for me, for example, I like the NES, and I have a pretty decent physical NES collection, and I'm still working on it and still adding to it. And for me, it just was not worth the price to get the modifications needed to upscale like an original NES. So I looked at a clone console alternative that just has HDMI out by default and just upscales it on its own. And it works a treat. Like, it may not be for everybody, but it's definitely out there, and it's available, and it's awesome that there's a console like that that's available. So it just really all boils down to what you're looking for, and what you're really wanting to do. So because some people, but they may not want to record or whatever. Not everybody wants to capture Mega Man 1 in 4K. Some people just want to be able to relive some of their nostalgia. Especially if they still do have their old consoles and stuff like that. So.
Oh god, Mega Man 1, 60 frames, too fast, too fast.
Yeah, no, like, and you also bring up a good point with that too. It's like, because like you have the older models of Retro Tank, which only really do up to 480p, right? And then I think I think it was like one of those models was specifically like made for consoles like the Xbox and the original GameCube, where or I'm sorry, the original Xbox and GameCube. There was only one GameCube, unfortunately. Greatest fucking Nintendo console ever. Don't even at me. Where they allow for 480p pass through and line doubled 480p, because if I'm not mistaken, the original Retro Tank 2X was only compatible with 480i, which was the major issue.
I think so. I think that's because that's why I ended up getting the multi-format, was for the 480p compatibility.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, too, those lesser forms of Retro Tank, they were the cheaper alternatives, but I think, if I'm not mistaken, some of those are discontinued at this point, which really sucks, because I feel like for those really just those plug and play types of devices, like, or just alternatives to the component to HDMI converters, like that would be a perfect alternative, where you don't have to have all the bells and whistles. You just have the thing that does what it needs to do.
Yeah. And I was unaware of that, if some of those models have been discontinued.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, because last I checked, when I was getting my Retro Tank, when I was on Mike Chi's websites, if I'm not mistaken, they were saying like discontinued, like no longer supported, probably because there are things like the multi-format and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, which, to be fair, some of that makes a little sense when you have a thing that's around that same price range anyway, and is doing the same exact thing, just not as much as the major one, right?
Yeah.
So, before I continue on and start talking up a storm here, Kaos has finally joined us, so why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hey, how's it going, guys? I'm Kaptain Kaos. Glad to be here.
Was it worth it?
If you wanna like kind of speed through some of the questions, we're only on question number 4 here. If you want to just kind of speed through the first 3 and give your thoughts on number 4 before we move on.
Yeah, sure. Number 4.
Yeah, we're on number 4
Okay.
right now, but if you want to kind of go through the first 3 and like give like short answers on that real
Yeah,
quick.
sure. So for the first one, like, my preferred method is just pretty much just emulators on PC. I know there's the appeal of like the emulator consoles, which I haven't tried those. But I do I have been interested in checking those out. But yeah, I mean, that's mostly how I do how I like play older games for the most part. But I can see the appeal of even just like collecting retro games or playing them on older consoles, or not even trying to like upscale them. But yeah, in terms of backwards compatibility, I really think that's where, and I've said this multiple times. I feel like that's where I feel like Microsoft's really got it right. Where Sony's, in terms of consoles, Sony has just continued to get it wrong ever since really like PS3. They've been doing this where they've just kind of neglected backwards compatibility for the most part. Whereas like Microsoft with the Xbox at least has really kind of embraced it. And I feel like that's just kind of a mistake in terms in regards to Sony's consoles. But that's, I don't know, that's kind of my general thoughts on that. I do, like, in terms of what I wish it was capable of. I don't know. I feel like there's definitely improvements, I guess, that could be made in terms of the Xbox emulation or just backwards compatibility emulation. But I feel like they have been making improvements ever since the 360 in regards to that, because I do remember there were some issues with the 360 not being able to emulate certain original Xbox games well.
Hey, real quick,
yeah,
Chaos, you got some like whistling going through your mic. I'm not sure if.
Oh,
Are you boiling tea, my man?
I thought that was a recorder for a
Is
second.
that why she graduated?
Okay. Yeah, hold on a second. Sorry.
Damn it, Singh! I heard that, you piece of shit.
I know. I'm a horrible
Fucking
person.
asshole.
Why are you making people upset?
Oh, I just got it. Yeah, I had to think about it for a minute.
Yeah. James, since you're back, do you want to go on number 4 real quick while we wait on Chaos?
Let's see. People ultimately boil than modding consoles having HD.
Is it still going, or
Yeah,
like...
it's still going.
The tea is still boiling, yes.
Well, could I say mine real quick then, or James, did you want to go?
You shoot yours first. I had to read the question anyway.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, honestly, I just use CRTs whenever I can. But in the rare case, I do like the efforts like people do to make like clone consoles like analog, or they use real SNES hardware. But the problem is that the Super NTs go out of stock really quick, and they go for extremely high prices on eBay.
Mhm.
So but those upscale to 1080p and give you a ton of options if you don't want to go through the whole trouble of getting upscalers or OSCCs. They did one for the Genesis, and then they had one for the Analog Pocket. I've heard good things about those. I'm actually really happy with the Super NT since it even plays Famicom games as well.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
I just want to say this for my own chime in on that. I'm not going to go too into it, but like I'm not a huge big fan of analog personally. But for those who look into it, again, it's totally on the consumer themselves. What they want and what they want to do. But for me personally, analog would not be my first choice, and that's all I'm going to say on that because that's kind of outside the scope of this video. So
That's fair.
Okay, can you guys still hear it?
No, now you're
no,
good.
it's better. Yeah.
Okay. I need to get rid of this fucking microphone. It's been giving me really weird fucking issues. So
You didn't
let me know if it happens again.
For sure.
I can't hear it at all, so I don't know.
Got you.
But
Yeah.
but yeah. Lastly, honestly, experience, in my experience, like analog's been working fine for me for Super Nintendo, but most of the time it's just going on the CRT. I did actually get like a Trinitron PVM, and that looks really good.
Nice.
Alrighty,
So
so
yeah, that's all for me.
Alrighty, cool. So Chaos, if you want to just pick up from where you left off, and then when Chaos finishes,
Yeah,
you can,
just
go, James.
Yeah, TLDR, just saying, I think, yeah, emulation's definitely come a long way. I definitely think that, like, I don't really know how much it's really improved on the more recent Xbox consoles, because I mean, is Xbox the only like console that's really doing any kind of like backwards compatibility emulation as
No,
far? Because I mean,
But they
no,
stopped.
they stopped.
oh, okay,
I don't
They
think.
stopped in 2021, but they did add in like a bunch of games during its
because I know
last
with like
update.
the One S and the one, obviously like Series X, you have the ability to add in like emulators and stuff like that. Um,
Yeah, it's
but
not
I
official,
mean,
but
it's the
you
only
can do
console I
that.
know of that's really like doing that.
Yeah, because it's the only way you can do it without having to mod your consoles. At least having a
Yeah.
sandbox mode is good because funny enough is that it gives people that just want to play old games like their fix and then doesn't risk their console being compromised.
Yeah, if it were up to me, I guess like in terms of like what could be improved about emulation, um, in terms of consoles, I really wish that ideally you would be able to play like all of the most of, or at least most of the, maybe like a few generations back at the most, games on the newer version of each console. But I know for certain reasons that might not be possible. Um, and at least if it's not possible, like, physical media or anything like that, like being able to put in old discs into a new console, at least they should do something, on the software end, maybe where they give you some kind of, if not their own emulation, like, give you access to emulators on your console or something like that, like what, like, with what Microsoft is doing. Um, in terms of just emulation, just in general, um, I can't really think of too much. I really do feel like it's of course it's not pure, it's not perfect. We still have improvements that need to be made on, like, for instance, like the PS3 emulator. It's still, I think it's technically still in its, even still in its beta stages. So I mean, like, there's still improvements that need to be made there. But for example, like for other emulators that have been around for a while now, like the PS2 emulator, SNES emulator, all these other emulators, like they've, I mean, as far as I know, they're pretty, like, like I said, not perfect, but they're about as good as you can get if you want to, like, play older games at a higher resolution, like high frame rate. Um, but yeah, I would definitely would just like to see, I guess, more improvements be made in regards to, some of the emulators that are still in their beta stages. Like PS3 emulator, RPSX3, whatever it was called. Um, or, the I think there's an Xbox emulator too that they've been working on, maybe, I don't know, maybe
It's
improve upon
really,
that.
it's in its infancy as far as I'm aware,
Yeah.
because like they only just figured out how like original Xbox emulation is supposed to work.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I definitely feel like, especially the PS3 emulator is gonna, it's gonna be difficult just because of the architecture of the PS3 is so weird. So I mean, I feel like it's definitely gonna take a while for that to really get to like where it's actually, I don't know, maybe on the same level as like what we have with uh PCSX2 or anything like that. But yeah, that's just my, yeah, I mean, that's pretty much answers to that question.
All right, if you want to just go on number 4 really quick before we let James go on here.
Oh, sorry,
for that
yeah.
one.
Um, uh, how should it be improved? I don't really have too much to say about this, as I'm not really, I don't really use OCSS, OSSC, or Retro, or the any of the other emulator consoles.
Oh, these are
But
video upscalers; they're not consoles.
or the video upscalers, yeah. Um, I don't know. I mean, like, I feel like that the reason most people use upscalers, right, is just because they want to be able to play it like on the original hardware, but just upscaled, basically. Am I kind of correct about that
For the
assumption? Or
most part,
Okay.
Unless if you have like a very specific use case for it, like if you're really trying to upscale and like show off how that game looks like, on its
Yeah.
native hardware with very high resolution, such as 1440p and sooner or later 4K, and this is an extremely niche use case where you downscale in some cases, because you can actually use some of these video upscalers to downscale modern consoles to play on CRTs. But that's an
Okay.
extremely niche use case. Most people that are buying these are just looking to play their old stuff on modern hardware, or on modern monitors, I should say.
I honestly don't have much of an opinion about this. It's mostly because I don't really have much experience with upscalers, and I mean, I feel like they've, like with emulation, it feels like they've also come a long way. I mean, I'm sure there's definitely things that could still be improved upon, but yeah, I just don't have much opinion about it.
Alrighty,
Same.
that's fair.
I don't know much about it.
Alrighty, that's fair.
Sorry, I'm not a nerd.
Okay, so with that in mind, Drill, since I see you highlighting number 5 here, do you want to go ahead and read off number 5 here for us? If you're here.
Yeah, in recent years, companies have often resorted to emulation in order to release older titles on modern hardware due to lack of workable source code for porting. Do you think this approach works well, or should companies invest more in decompiling games in order to port them with features emulation cannot provide, i.e., additional content? Yeah.
If you want to go first, you can.
I mean, emulation's fine to release older games if it's possible. I mean, they've done it with like the recent TMNT games, and then they even added in stuff to make it to like extra lives and even like fix slowdown. I know like the recent Mario GBA game on Switch Online gave you all the e-reader levels, and
Which is super nice.
most of them didn't even come out here in the US. I think one of them was like for like a rare promo that was only in Japan. So yeah, I think it's fine to use it as long as 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 long as you do put in quality of life and keep the price fair. At least in my opinion.
It's kind of funny how you bring up the whole price point. I was actually doing a bit of reading not too long ago. There was an old arcade game released back in the mid-90s called Cannon Dancer. Goes by another name, but I can't remember what it is off the top of my head. It was essentially like kind of a pseudo spiritual successor to Strider that was actually announced a couple of months back, getting at least some kind of re-release onto modern platforms. Now, keep in mind, it's an arcade game. You could beat it in like a couple of hours, but apparently they're coming out with the price point of supposedly $34, which gets kind of ridiculous for something that's likely just emulated. And again,
Wasn't that called
short game.
Osman?
Yeah, that's what it was. I forget which titles they used in which region, but yeah, that was the name of the game for sure.
Yeah, I think it was Osman in certain regions and Cannon Dancer for.
Did he cut out for you guys, or?
Yeah. Oh God, I
Yeah,
thought that was
yeah.
me again.
Who?
I was
Me?
like, oh no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I muted my mic. That was why. No, that's all I had to say. It was like that's what I was saying. Like different regions, different names, that type of thing.
Sing, what was that one game we were talking about the other night? Because I was saying like, oh yeah, wouldn't it be like cool if like there was a way to like preserve these old like arcade games, right? Because there's not like how many of those arcade games are like preserved and actually released on like digital storefronts, right? Or even like have a
I
release,
think
right?
the game I was talking to you about that was Raiden 2 for the arcade. it's never outside of a very old PS1 port. Never got a release on consoles because when they originally made the arcade board port, it was so heavily encrypted. I think to this day they haven't got it properly working on emulators, and they have no idea how to decrypt it themselves because the people who decrypted it long since left the company. At least that's what I recall hearing. I don't know if that's actually confirmed or not.
Yeah, because that's the other thing too is like, well, if they I'm sure with like, older very specific titles that emulating is not necessarily an issue. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if, like, say, the recent Castlevania ports, for example, that we've been getting, like those, if those weren't just based off an emulator as opposed to the official source code.
I believe for the most part they were emulated. It's usually done by M2, who handles a lot of their stuff through some kind of
M2 is
emulation.
amazing. That's all you need to know.
I agree, 100%.
Yeah, because I'm thinking like, like when we think about like that, right? Like, and I think about like, oh, okay, well, like, what is a very prime example of this going completely wrong when they don't actually have the source code, but they still try to, do an HD port or a modern port of that? And what's the one collection that comes to mind for everybody? It's fucking Silent Hill HD collection, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It didn't happen.
Yes. look at all the other ones. Look at all the other ones. You had Shadow of the Colossus. You had the Metal Gear Solid collections. Those were done well. And then you have Silent Hill HD collection. My girlfriend's been wanting to play the Silent Hill collection, like mostly 3, but she will refuse to play that version because that version sucks.
It's I'm glad you brought up those two specific, the Ico Shadow Colossus and Metal Gear Solid collection, because those were all done by Blue Point.
Mm-hmm. Same people that did Demon Souls remake.
It's like, okay, like Blue Point is like the, if you want like peak quality, I guess, for like a remaster, that's the team you want to go
Gold
with,
standard
right?
so far.
Yeah, because like they went out of their way to like recreate assets, make those games run at like 60 FPS and stuff like that. I guess you could also argue Capcom to some degree with their HD ports, because Capcom will go out of their way to like redo character models. They're not perfect. Their problem is that they don't redo everything to a golden standard. Resident Evil 4 says hello. Original RE4, not remake. But for the most part, like, their games function whenever they do remaster them, and they do some minor bits of effort when putting those games on modern platforms. I put like their Resident Evil 1 remake and 0 HD remasters, or the Origins collections, if you will, as like a very high standard of them doing a remaster in-house done well, because of the amount of effort that they put into those games. It's, again, not perfect, but like, way better than what some other companies might have done. So like, I don't know, like it's not necessarily that if a company decides to resort to emulation to remaster or re-release a game, that's necessarily bad. It's a matter of how it's done, I think.
I can agree with that.
Agreed, because if it's done poorly, you know what happens.
Mm-hmm.
You get dunked on a lot.
I'm also not a fan of PS Plus's emulation tactics. I don't like the idea of streaming an older game, especially if the internet is as bad as mine. AT&T user here.
I mean, I have a lot to say about it, but I'm just gonna wait till that question gets around.
All right. Yeah, no, I just wish that like, isn't the N64 emulation still streaming?
No, it's native.
No, it isn't.
Oh, it isn't? Oh, I thought it was.
It's subscription based, because it's
Okay.
set to NSO, but it's not using streaming.
Gotcha. Okay. I remember it was really bad at the beginning, though. I guess they fixed it.
Okay, did anybody else want to go on number 5 here, or?
No, I think I'm good.
Cool. James, do you want to read off number 6 here for us?
If a company releases an older title through emulation, would you object to them using a pre-existing emulator as long as it was properly licensed for distribution, or should the company use an in-house solution? I would prefer an in-house solution, but if emulation becomes their only option due to like a loss of source code, I'm fine with it.
Yeah, that's
Better than
pretty much
nothing,
my
I'd
opinion.
say.
Yeah, it's...
Yeah.
Oh, go on.
No,
I
it's
was
just
gonna
because.
say, sorry.
Oh no, you go through.
Yeah, the reason why I kind of went with this question is a bit of an interesting topic that came up with this one. So, Capcom's been doing a lot of like legacy collections and whatnot. A lot of it's used in a like basically in-house solutions. That kind of changed when they started doing the Capcom arcade stadiums, where they actually used MAME on that front. So I thought that was kind of an interesting point that like with a lot of these like internal or just standard emulation procedures for whenever they had to do emulation, and here like all of a sudden you have these two arcade collections that decide to go with a fairly commonly used arcade emulator for like modern porting projects, and I just thought it was kind of an interesting point. Like when you start getting into using like external like sources, I guess, for like emulation, it kind of begs the question: do you think that for however they charge these collections, you think it's worth the extra lack of effort per se when most of the work is already done for them?
They usually
I didn't really
overcharge.
think about it that way. Yeah, I mean, considering it's already based off of like emulated versions of the game, like it depends, I guess. Like, um, I guess if they're like it's going to like improve upon that or something, I don't know. But yeah, I don't know, because if you're essentially like paying for like, oh, this is the emulated version of this game, um, yeah,
So basically, the price should reflect the effort then.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah,
I think...
$0 and 0 cents.
I think, so, like, well, I could see that point. I also think, like, too, it really depends on the game, and how often that, like, company supports that franchise. Because if it's, like, a franchise that hadn't been supported for a while, right? And also, I guess, the rarity of said game, too, right? Like, then maybe the price is a little bit more justifiable, but, again, it really is just dependent on a number of different factors.
Actually, speaking of this, real quick, I just kind of thought of something. Like, does anybody know like how they did like the remasters of the Shenmue games? Like, were those based off of the emulated versions, or were those like actually like uh,
I
using like the
believe
source
those
code?
were essentially made from the ground up. I
Okay,
can't remember
because
from
Shenmue is a
anything.
game where it doesn't the emulated versions have had like some issues, so I wasn't sure if that was the case.
My understanding is that those games use a mix of, especially 2 specifically, is that it uses a mix of the stuff from both Dreamcast and Xbox port.
Xbox.
Yeah, so that is a little bit more of a specific use case where they they did have to recreate it from the ground up, but again, that's like one of the thing that I was trying to get at too, is that like depending on the game, the franchise, right, if it's a collection, and depending on like how often it's supported, how hard it is to pick up, right, as far as like getting an original copy, maybe collection isn't necessarily a bad a $30 or $20 price tag isn't so bad of a price. So I think that's why it's like a number of different factors vary. One thing that kind of comes to mind is like, okay, like the first two Yakuza games or Like a Dragon games, whichever you prefer, right? For the longest time, they were going for like almost $300 prior to reprints. And the really fucked up part about it is that they had an HD collection in Japan for both PS3 and Wii U. And they just never bothered to localize it. So it's sometimes it's just a matter of just, did those companies even bother to localize those things, right? Because maybe the price of $30 isn't so bad if you take in some of those factors into account. But I also think too, like if your only option is digital, maybe you shouldn't be charging that much, especially if it's only a simple port. So I don't know. It's a very complicated question, I guess.
I just had like a funny thought. I blame Chaos for this. I could just imagine Rio just walking around going, "Excuse me, do you know where I can find some emulators?"
Can you tell me?
I would love.
Yeah, I kind of got the Assassin's Creed. What was it? The Assassin's Creed. Was it? Which one was the game that had the bug where people's faces disappeared or whatever?
Unity.
Unity. Yeah, I had the Unity problem with Shenmue at times, where people's faces would disappear and it'd just be a floating set of eyes.
Excuse me,
can't
do you know
see
where I
me,
can find your
man.
face?
Which port did you play?
It was no. This was the emulated version, so this was the null DC version.
Okay. But this was for Shenmue 1 or 2?
I just played one. One had a lot of graphical issues for times.
Oh no.
Yeah.
On PC?
Yeah. Well, this
Fuck.
is yeah.
This is the
Master Race.
This is the
Well, this
emulated
isn't.
version.
I'm not talking about the official remaster. I'm talking about the emulated version of the game. The
Okay.
the
Oh,
Dreamcast.
oh.
Yeah.
Okay,
No, I'm
good.
not.
That's a
No, the
shame,
emulated
though.
versions are fine. Or not the remasters are fine. Not the. So yeah, play that. Don't play the emulated.
This is a very confusing conversation.
I love
Yes,
how
it
it's like
is.
the emulated versions. Wait, shit, no, those versions. Fuck.
All right. So anyway, I guess while we got the ball rolling, Chaos, if you want to read off number 7 here for us.
Sure. For emulators that are in ongoing development, would you prefer to use it regardless of compatibility/stability, or wait until it has more time to mature? I did kind of go over this. I really feel like it does kind of depend. Because I think we can take like what I mentioned before, like RPSS3, for example, because there are games on there that are in a pretty much I would say mostly playable, if not completely like playable state. Although like it's in development and they're still like working on the emulator. It's probably the best way you can play, I would say, quote unquote remaster of like Demon Souls, for instance, is to play it on that. Because as far as I know, it's that game on there is in like a I mean, somebody who's played it on there can correct me if I'm wrong, but is in like almost a completely playable state. On that emulator.
I think it even runs at 60 FPS, and if I'm not mistaken, I want to say that there's private servers that re-enable the online, since the online for the original PS3 version has been disabled.
And the amazing thing about it too is like games that had these technical issues on the original PS3. One game that comes to mind is Dragon Guard 3. That game had a lot of really bad frame rate drops on the original console. They've recently come out with like a patch that addresses that. So, it actually runs at a pretty stable like 60 frames now. So I really feel like just to answer the question, like there are definitely emulators that are worth, even if they are still in development, like worth getting, because there are going to be games on there that are they're pretty much in a playable state, even though it's still an emulator that is being currently in development. So I think it's worth like checking those out, because who knows how long it's going to take until those emulators are, pretty much. Well, I mean, it's never really technically, I guess, finished, but until they're at the same state as
Until
some of
they're damn
the
near
other ones that have been around
perfect,
for
right?
yeah, the ones that have been around for a long time.
Yeah, so the two emulators for me that come to mind that just kind of at least in my experience have not given me a very good experience as far as or actually three I should say, that haven't really given me a good experience as far as emulating, and I'm not sure how much one of them has changed over time because I tried this other one a long time ago. The Sega Saturn emulator, the the Nintendo DS emulator, and the Nintendo 3DS emulator. Now, the Sega Saturn emulator I tried a while ago, and I could not even get it to run an ISO at all, so I just gave up on it. So I don't know if it's gotten any easier or if anybody's ever tried to make a definitive Saturn emulator. If that's changed, please tell me because I'd love to know. The DS emulator I tried not too long ago, like a couple months ago, and while that works, I had an issue with sound where sound was just not playing properly.
Yeah,
but
I had that same
runs,
issue.
Otherwise, runs for the most part how it should, despite the sound issue. It's the 3DS emulator that kind of bums me out, is because I've heard that it is an emulator that is supposed to run very well with Intel processors and doesn't very much cooperate with AMD processors, and I have an Intel processor. The problem is that the games don't run at a stable frame rate or barely at all, and no matter what I tried to do to fuck around with it and get it to stabilize and actually look like I could play the game that I wanted to record, which at the time was Resident Evil: The Mercenaries 3D, it just wasn't happening. So, like, as someone who's very bummed out about the fact that it just wasn't working out, I do at least want to see these emulators get better, because obviously over time, like, things will change and things will get better, but it's going to take a lot of time.
I think my stance on it is that I personally like to wait until the emulators have had a little bit of time in the oven. So compatibility is not necessarily full, but at least, you know, that there's a good handful of things to play. Because, like, for example, like with the PS3 emulator, for the longest time, like, the only game you could really play that 81 really bothered to really mess with to test it was Demon Souls. Like, that was, like, literally the only game that was compatible for a really long time. And then I remember, like, suddenly out of nowhere it was like, oh, Catherine, you know, is compatible at 60 FPS, which is, you know, was just like, oh, okay, I guess they're, you know, still in active development. But you know, in some instances, you know, like you said, even with like the Sega Saturn emulator, and I think Kaneki can vouch for this too, because that's a whole freaking thing, you know, especially when it comes to specific types of Saturn emulation, like the one that I was using, which was, I believe, SSF.
Don't get me started with Saturn emulation, man.
You know, SSF was the Saturn emulator that I used, and I remember I used a really old beta version of it because I got the most consistent results with it, and I even upgraded to a later version that didn't work like the same way that I had gotten the other, like the old version to work. So it really just sometimes it's like, you know, that's all you get, you know, in terms of what's compatible and what isn't. So
I can't use ISO unless you would have to do a virtual CD.
Yeah,
Make
you
it like
had
a
to,
virtual CD, not CD player. Well, I forgot what you call it.
yeah, like a virtual CD drive. Yeah, an optical
Yeah,
drive.
I'm like, what? Just to play a Saturn game?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my god, it was a headache.
Yeah, it definitely was. But I mean, it's come a long way since. Like, there are definitely other Saturn emulators out there. But yeah, like, you know, sometimes, you know, there's just really not active development on specific consoles, and so like whatever
Vita is
emulators out
also
there is really what you get, you know.
the Vita is also one of them because let's be honest. Who doesn't want to play or emulate Killzone Mercenaries, for example, on
Oh God, yes.
their personal computers? But
Or
so
Murmasa
far,
Rebirth.
Or just
Master
put it
Yeah.
on the PS4 or 5.
I think I heard you could.
Sony's allergic to that.
I think I heard you. Isn't there like a Wii version of Muramasa that
Yes.
people are emulating that on Dolphin?
Yeah, there is.
I want to play that too. God damn it!
That's
Um,
the first version that came out, and then the
The
PSP
Rebirth is
version.
like the definitive version.
Yes.
I guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's the only one that has DLC. So honestly, don't play
Do
the Wii
we
version.
have like a Vita emulator? It's
Not
I mean,
really.
okay.
It's very in early stages from what I remember.
Yeah, because I feel like they should either like I don't know. It's crazy that we haven't gotten a port of that game. I'm actually kind of shocked that we don't have
Right.
like a port of that to like modern hardware.
Considering all the ports of Odin Sphere, which was done by the same company, like
Yeah.
it's like you would think that Muramasa would get the same treatment.
Is there a bias
Exactly.
in the company? Do they just not like Muramasa? Is that it?
They like they like
don't
the
know.
pretty girls in Open Sphere, apparently.
Like, fucking Muramasa had better women, better looking women than Dragon's Crown. I'm sorry. And
Damn,
Odin's
we're
Sphere.
doing a waifu tier list on the podcast. Let's fucking go.
Let's go. Pull up right
Well,
fucking now. Let's
Smash
do
or
it.
pass it until next week.
You see Levy,
Aw.
Cope, Steve,
You see,
Miles.
Eli, you don't know taste. Muramasa's better.
Muramasa.
I know nothing about Muramasa, so I'm just going based off what I know. and
Culture
that's
yourself,
Odin
you
Sphere.
swine.
It
I
has
know.
good women. You.
I'm exposing myself
Mhm.
here.
I just
know
remember
nothing
it
about
being a really
Muramasa.
fun like side
James, are you-
scroller.
James, are you saying that just because there's the Kitsune waifu in there?
The sisters. Hell yeah.
I do remember those parts.
And-
Yeah, the hot spring.
Oh.
And not the Nekomata?
We never forget.
Never forget.
All right, before
best
this
game.
becomes the After Dark podcast.
Look, I'm gonna just say it's Vanillaware. It knows what's up. That's all you need to know.
Hot
They're the
take.
real
Both,
ones.
both have
'cause they
terrible
don't report their
waifus.
shit
Move
there.
on.
Didn't they interview one of the guys who's the character designer of the dragon? Or
Yes.
what was it for Dragon's
Yes.
Crown? And he was
Dragon's
like,
Crown.
George
just-
Kawatami, I think
he just
his
said
name
like
was.
I like big boobs basically.
Yes. It was
Chad.
It was-
Chad responds. Couldn't be any more
it was-
based if he tried.
It was because of the sorceress from Dragon's Crown. He's like, I just like big tits. I don't know what you're talking about.
He's a good man. Probably donates to charity.
Exactly. Has a
Just
loving
straight up.
wife and kids.
Straight up to the point.
Well,
Anyway,
if he
yeah.
says
before,
boobs over ass, then I
Yeah.
would agree.
before we turn it into the After Dark podcast, did anybody else have anything to say on number 7 before we move on here?
I'm good.
I'm good.
Did Kaneki go at all? Because I wasn't.
Oh,
I stepped away for a second.
no. I helped
Yeah, you did.
Daybreaker with his answer.
Oh, okay.
No, he went.
All right.
I think in my case, I usually just kind of see how things are, and if it's not really compatible with what I want to play on it, I just wait until it is.
Mhm.
And on a side note, for the love of God, can we outlaw emulator creators from using fucking acronyms in their emulators? Because I am not pronouncing that shit. Just give me simple names like Citra.
Tongue
You're
twister.
just not trying hard enough.
Is
Like
is,
Redream, is the Dreamcast emulator. That's simple to remember. Yeah.
EVGA, that's
Dolphin's
easy, right?
easy to remember. Citra's easy
Workstation.
to remember.
Well,
Yeah. I
well,
agree
no
with
shit,
that
Dolphin's
point.
easy. Well, the reason why Dolphin is easy to remember because that's what the GameCube was called. It was originally called
Yeah,
Project
that was
Dolphin.
Project Dolphin. Yeah.
So kudos for them for that.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? Dolphin doesn't emulate Nintendo stuff. They emulate the Big N.
Yeah.
We don't tolerate racism on here, sir.
It's on the Steam page.
We'll talk about that
We'll get
emulator
to
in
that.
a
though.
second.
We'll get to that.
Yes, we will.
Sorry,
Such
Dom, we're
good-
demonetized. Call it a day.
Man, I don't give a fuck about money. Yeah, I do this for fun. Anyway,
Exactly.
yeah, if Kaneki, if you want to take on number 8 then for us here.
All right, number 8. What are your thoughts on PlayStation Plus Extra / Premium and Nintendo Switch Online Plus expansion pack being used for playing older games over the PS Store and Virtual Console that was used in the past for Wii, Wii U, and PS3? This is a simple answer. It's pretty garbage, lackluster. Didn't even put effort when
Sony's quite
with
lazy.
how they're doing it.
Yeah.
PS Plus, not much better than Nintendo's, but the only thing I'll give them credit for is some games you can purchase for. I can't say the same for when Nintendo did it first. Like, why lock these games behind subscriptions in the first place?
I
It's
agree.
just a
That's
cash
me.
grab.
And
Yeah.
I think
I-
just real quick, just like going off of what Kaneki said, like there are some games where like you could just get them for free just because you purchase them on PSP, Vita, or PS3.
Not Tekken 2, baby.
But
Idiots.
Or
you
already,
can
already
get
directors.
you can get all of the Siphon Filter games for free, or you can get like Legend of Dragoon if you purchase them on legacy hardware. But when it comes to like specific games like fucking Resident Evil or Tekken 2, there are those games where they're just like, yeah, no, we want you to pay again. And I don't know if that's entirely Sony or if that's just Sony just being like, yeah, we're just going to leave it up to the publisher, and rather than enforcing a, hey, this is either going to be free or it's not type of deal, you know? So
It's Sony, so I have a very hard time believing they aren't doing some sort of scumbag maneuver.
Can I just say something real quick?
yeah,
Go
go
ahead.
for it.
I really don't like the idea of paying a monthly fee for these older games.
Oh, I agree.
Like, is that fair to say?
Yeah, no,
I mean,
that's
we don't
fair.
like paying for online, let alone that.
Yeah, that's
I'm fine putting down like $10 for like a game. Like if it's something I really want to play, like Silent Hill,
Mhm.
I pay $10 for it.
if it's on there.
So-
Yeah, if it is.
So I got a question for you then, Eli, and
Sure.
I guess you guys can kind of chime in on this because like some of these games, like you know,
Yeah.
if you want to get them for free, you have to get them on the legacy storefronts, right? And I know, you know, obviously whether or not people are going back on those storefronts is going to really depend on the person, right? If knowing that these games are going to be free on these newer storefronts, just based on your legacy purchases, would you go back on your older consoles just to make those purchases to guarantee that you would get it for free on the you know, PS4 or PS5 in this case?
I guess if I had the older consoles, I would.
Mm.
But I
Yeah.
never had a PS3, so
Oh,
I
Vita?
feel left out. Well, I had a
Yeah.
Vita, but I
Well-
had a few games on it.
I would
Kind of
actually
the other way
agree.
around.
Well, I actually will agree with that because if you have a PS3, there are more chances you can get the PS1 games. But
Yeah.
sadly, there are some PS1 games that that didn't get transferred over to the Vita
Right.
or PSP,
Well,
and that sucks.
the other issue with that too is that at least on PS3 and Vita, you're not getting sales anymore, like discounts. I mean, right? So
Yeah.
you know, if these games do come out on like PS4 and PS5, you do have the chance of potentially getting them for cheaper than what they're coming out for, which I think on average they're coming out for $10, which is way better when
Yeah.
compared to what Sony was doing with the PS2 to PS4 system, where it was like $15 for some of these old games.
15 to 10, yeah, or cheaper.
Which 15 isn't necessarily a bad price, but then it depends on the game that you're paying $15 for, I think. So and I think that's also the case with the games that are $10. Like, what game are you charging $10 for that's worth $10, and is it justifiable for that $10? Because like, I'm not gonna pay $10 for a game I've never heard of, doesn't look interesting, and C, as far as I know, is pretty average and nobody really gives a shit about.
Pretty much. Nobody
I think
wants
the
to
only-
pay that much.
I think the only company that's really like figured a way around this was Microsoft. Like, as far as I'm aware, like let's say GTA 4, I bought it on the 360, and I'm sure that if I had a Series X, I would be able to play it like easily. Like,
As far as I
Yeah.
know, yeah.
Yeah, because I was gonna say like the whole thing with like PlayStation Plus and Premium. The one thing I don't like about it, and I know Eli mentioned this before, is that if you want to play like PS3 games, you have to stream them, and if your internet is shitty, you're not gonna have a good experience. But that was in the beginning though for the PS Now, because that's all that Premium
Well,
is.
it's
is
still
just
the same
plus
thing.
it.
It's PlayStation
Yeah.
Now. Like PS Now was so fucking bad when I when I played
Oh, yeah.
Way of the Samurai 3, it ended up making me just get the fucking game on physically on PlayStation 3, and then eventually on PC when it got ported.
Yeah.
Maybe that was their strat the whole time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just buy the fucking game on the platform, you dumbass, because streaming isn't going to work.
It's even the same thing can be said about fucking Nintendo. You have the expansion pass. Like, if you had like online already for Nintendo, what are you gonna get? You're gonna get Game Boy games. You're gonna get NES and Super Nintendo. That's all you're getting. But if you wanted to play games for like Game Boy Advance, Nintendo 64, Sega Genesis, you had to get the expansion. And I heard that some of the games that you play, like Paper Mario, for example, they don't run very well. Oh, you hit a tree, crash. You hit a box,
Well,
crash.
they did actually fix it in recent updates.
Yeah, that's what I was.
That's the problem with it though. That beginning mark, when they did that, it left a bad impression. So are people gonna go back and pay $50 for a year just to play that? That's a lot of people. A lot of people would just be like,
Unfortunately, they
no.
are.
That's
Some-
the same
I mean,
problem with
the
Sony.
push-
Like,
Yep.
real
Yep.
quick drill, like before I let you go here, is like, in the case of Sony, they were charging $100, and some of these games, they're based on the PAL versions, the versions that aren't good or run at
Ape Escape.
50 FPS. Now,
Two.
I think like when you're talking about like, hey, this is a game that we're putting on this platform now, why are you basing it off of an inferior version when we have the technology to quote what is it, fucking Patrick Star from SpongeBob, we have technology to run these old games at the frame rates that they should be running at, and not at frame rates that they were never good at.
No,
So,
I'm just reminded.
but-
I'm reminded of Family Guy, where it's like, we have the technology, we can rebuild it, but I don't want to spend a whole lot of money.
Yeah, that's Sony. But anyway, before I go on a huge tangent, Drill, if you want to continue your point here.
But yeah, I mean, with this, I think the reason why they do the whole subscription service is because that leads to more potential revenue streams compared to just a one-time purchase. Like, more people would just buy the games that they like, and then, of course, there's the casual saying, "Oh, why am I going to spend $10 when I can just pay a subscription? Then I can get access to all these games." But probably a lot of them they don't play. Like, who's going?
Which,
Like, yeah.
Was this a Steam library?
well, okay, so my counterpoint to that, and yeah, that does sound like the Steam library, James. I'll give you that one, but like,
I'm guilty of it too. I got like 50 games I haven't even touched yet, sitting in my library.
Same.
Only 50?
Okay,
Ah.
Sing.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Come
All
on,
right,
you,
fine. You
Oh,
come
don't
on,
feel bad, Jade.
you
Don't
have
feel
the
bad,
entire
Jade.
library. Let's go.
I'm
But,
guilty.
yeah, like my counterpoint to that is like, okay, yeah, the subscription base, sure, whatever. I don't think necessarily that the subscription is inherently like bad. It's just the idea of like, hey, well, you're not always going to get the games that you want. Some of those games you have to pay for regardless of the policy of, hey, well, some of these games may honor those legacy purchases, and some of them are locked behind the subscription, either way. If like some of those factors weren't there, like keeping the subscription wouldn't necessarily harm it per se. It would still give people like the opportunity to be like, hey, like this is PS Plus, I can play all these games, right? This is part of the subscription. But if I don't have PS Plus, I could just pay for them and own them and not have to worry about losing out on them if I run out of PS Plus in the future, right?
Same thing with
Exactly.
Game Pass. You
So-
don't have to get the subscription. You can still get each game individually, but if you get Game Pass, you get a lot of options just to try out some games that you may not have tried out before. And if you like them, hey, you can buy them at a discount before they get removed from Game Pass.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
So like I said, I don't necessarily think that the subscription is necessarily inherently bad. It's just a matter of like, well, some of the practices around the subscription and some of the practices around the like backwards compatibility, and at least in the case of like Sony, right, is like it's just not great. I can't speak on like Nintendo, and I can't speak on like how Microsoft does it because I'm just not familiar with it. So
I would say for Nintendo, it's cheaper. For like if you're doing like a month, 3 months, a year, it's cheaper. Sure, people look at that, it's like, oh, that's a good thing. It's a lot better than the other ones. But on the other hand, each service has a different quality to it, and it offers different things. But I'm going to say it's somewhat of a necessary evil, and that's the sad thing. You want to play Call of Duty with your friends, you got to get PlayStation Plus. Oh, you want to play old games? Get premium. If you just want to play games that are only for PS4 that they allow to go on that service, get extra. It's really strange, like why the world has come to this.
Yeah. All right. Any
I hate gaming.
final thoughts on number 8 before we move on to number 9, which I know a lot of you are going to be looking forward to this question.
No.
Don't necessarily have anything to add. Just that with the Nintendo thing, you could do what I do and just grab a couple buddies and just pay for the family plan.
Yeah, Sony. How about that? The only service that hasn't caught on to that idea yet.
I'm not gonna lie.
Now too.
Yeah,
yep, Game Pass. Sony's gonna do it next. They have to. Everyone's gonna pressure them into doing it.
Not gonna lie, Daybreaker, that's fucking genius. And it's like, at least I'm not gonna ask you. Okay, so you have a family. Who is this? This is my brother. That's my brother. That's my brother.
Oh, that's
Are
my
y'all
cousin.
related?
Yep.
Different dads.
That's my cousin's mother's brother. Sony's got to jump on that shit. It's pissing me off.
Real quick, with that that family plan for Xbox, before we move on to number 9, does that also apply to their Microsoft Store for PC as well, or?
I believe so. They did shadow drop it today.
They didn't say. They didn't say.
Oh,
no. Somebody's got to find that out later tonight.
Details.
Yeah, somebody's got to find that out later tonight because I want to know. Because if that is the case, somebody's got to hook me up. Anyway,
welcome to the family, son.
$1.
The Series S family.
Now, if Sony was smart, they'd be like, "You can have 20 people. We have one up to both services." Take that.
If Sony was smart, we wouldn't have to pay to play online like the other two.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Anyway.
Wait, hold on. Did Xbox get rid of Gold?
Huh?
Question mark.
Well, it's automatically rolled into Game Pass Ultimate.
Oh, yeah, they're bugging. They got to do that. This is insanity.
Everything's
Sorry,
insanity,
we'll roast
man.
Sony in another podcast, I guess.
Yeah, we will.
Save for the next one.
So anyway, which one of you guys wants to take on number 9? I'll give it to anybody to ask first.
I'll take it because I was the one that wrote this question.
Alrighty, Lovey. That's all you.
All right, good. So, Steam has recently announced the release of the Dolphin emulator onto their store page. How do you feel about Steam bringing this and other emulators onto their platform? I'm skeptical.
I've already made the same joke twice. I'm not making the same joke
I'm
again.
very Like, my thing is, like, I'm very skeptical about it due to the fact that how will it run? Will it run the same as you get it anywhere else? Is it going to allow certain features, take away certain features? Tell us, Steam. Tell us what we need to know. Tell us, the gaming people. Of course you won't, Gaben, because you're so obsessed with your money after Steam sales.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised when I saw this that they were putting the Dolphin emulator on Steam. I just kind of hope if, like, I don't know, I guess if Nintendo doesn't just send them like take it down or send some kind of cease and desist or something.
We will send the ninjas after you.
I mean, like, I kind of hope it sets a precedent. Like, maybe we start seeing other emulators on Steam or something. That would be kind of cool.
We kind of already did with RetroArch, but do you want to explain more on that one?
Well.
Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, hopefully it's not a repeat of that then. But I mean, I don't know. Like, I'm kind of. I mean, did they really give us a lot of information about like why this is? They're putting this on Steam. Like, is it just another way to launch the emulator, or are they like just
probably for the sake of convenience for Steam Deck owners?
Pretty much,
yeah.
That does make a lot of sense. Hold on, I'm gonna look this up. I'll do a little bit of research for you guys. Kids, I have my Steam page opened up, so I'm gonna see about Dolphin.
Yeah, I remember on the Steam page they don't really tell you too much about it. So, I mean, a lot of it's just speculation at this point, as far as I know.
I mean, they say it's in early access, but obviously they're not giving it out yet.
Yeah, and it doesn't even say if it's Steam Deck compatible.
I mean, it would be cool if you could play it through the Steam Deck.
God damn
Steam
it,
Deck
Sing,
does
you weren't
what
wrong.
the Switch don't.
You weren't wrong about this. Dolphin Emulator is your one-way ticket to nostalgia if you're looking to relive classics from the big ends, cube-shaped, and motion-controlled console.
What do you
Wait,
think I made
motion
that joke?
controls.
They literally have it on the Steam page.
I think,
right, because it does.
I mean, I know it's a joke, but it's also them trying to get around probably Nintendo coming after them legally or something for using Nintendo.
So
Wait,
my understanding of them being able to emulate, technically the software itself is not illegal. It's the fact that you're transferring files that are technically legally owned by these companies. Therefore, that's how they can get you. If they're your own files for your own use from your own purchased copy, that's not necessarily the issue. It's when you start transferring over and sending those files over to other people,
which is of course how you should be playing the games.
Look,
Very legal.
Nope. No
It's
shading
been a
this
while
here.
since I've looked up on this, but Dolphin doesn't use a BIOS, does it?
No.
I haven't loaded mine up in a while, but I don't think so.
It doesn't use BIOS.
So yeah, then it should be safe for them because usually that's what gets a lot of emulators if they try distributing it with a BIOS that was clearly extracted from a console.
Oh,
because
so
they
that
can't
might
do
be
that.
why. So it might be a little bit trickier for other emulators to be put up on Steam
Yeah,
for that
some
reason.
emulators do require that shit, and that's why it can be a pain in the ass to run if you don't know where to find that shit yourself.
Does PCSX2 require an emulator, a BIOS?
Yes.
Yes, it does.
Yes, it does.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
Although, thankfully, that's one of the easier ones to do. When you start getting into like later gen, like PS3 or 360 or even the Wii U, yeah, that's where it tends to get a bit annoying.
Yeah,
Coming soon to Steam Virtual Machine.
I mean, I think it's cool. It just makes it more convenient for people to get if it's on like a storefront like that. It just
Yeah.
it's just
Like,
a matter
that's-
of if
if
the big N, shall we say, right, goes after them, right? It's like,
Communist racism will not be tolerated.
We're gonna get canceled now. Thanks.
blame the guy that did the description, not me.
yeah, look. All I'm just saying is that it's cool, but I could also see where the problems of
Right.
they step in and you got to take it down, and now Dolphin's gone because somewhere someone fucked up or they caught wind of it and made a big deal out of it, as opposed to being like, hey, we'd like to work with you and make it so that it's our property and we make some money out of it, right, or whatever, right? But
Cooperation? No.
well, what the fuck is a good idea, right? So
Remember, there's no such thing as a bad idea, only stupid people.
The big N will send people to stalk you.
That's the thing, though.
Never
that I've
forget
noticed-
the DS guy.
I mean, granted, putting emulators on there, like a software on there, they've been doing this a lot. They've been putting editing softwares on there. They've been putting like soundboard things on there. Just like a lot of things that Steam is doing. Like, granted, it's great, but I'd rather just go buy the software myself or just download it elsewhere.
yeah, I think it's just more of a ease of convenience,
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's like,
but there's also a problem, though. If you want to play a game while the video's editing, you do that. You gotta wait for the video.
Yeah, so I don't know, like at least in the case of emulators, I can't speak for other softwares and stuff like that are on Steam. I could see it more of a ease of use type of deal, especially for some of the more complicated emulators that you got to get set up. Emulators that aren't so friendly to use, simply because they're just very maybe not so supported, or maybe they're just very early in their stages of, let's say, life, right?
Yeah.
Life finds a way.
Okay. Anybody else on this topic? Maybe Kaneki or James?
Oh, good. I don't know if Kaneki said anything about this. I think he said something
right? Or
this
what?
about Dolphin Emulator being on Steam. What's your thoughts about it?
I don't really get the point. I don't know. What does that do for the emulator itself? People can already download it if they want to.
Yeah, that's what the point
That's
is.
kind of what I'm wondering myself.
Probably for the people
yeah.
who don't venture outside of Steam for downloads.
Yeah, because I'm looking
What
at
are they,
this.
weenies?
But here's the thing that I've noticed. Like, I'm looking at the description of it. It's just telling you what an emulator does. Slow motion, turbo.
Everyone
quick save,
knows
or
what an
save state.
emulator is at this point. Like, come on.
Exactly. That's
Yeah, I don't get the
dumb.
point. I mean, it's nice, I guess, but I don't get the point. There must be something else going on.
I think it, like I said before,
Convenience.
I think it's just the ease of convenience of, hey, it's in a place where it's easy to download. You know, don't really have to look far. You don't have to jump through multiple sites or whatever. It's just there.
They have a single site.
Yeah.
Well,
I
they're gonna
would
have-
agree. I would agree if it wasn't like 2 clicks away to get the thing.
Right. I'm just saying, like if we were just talking about general emulators, not specifically Dolphin, right? I'm not saying that that's the case for every single emulator, but you know, there probably are some emulators where it's like, yeah, it's you got to jump through a couple of shoddy sites, and you may or may not get a Trojan on your computer. If you did that, then I don't know where the fuck you've been.
In this
going.
case, yeah, I was just talking
All
Dolphin
driver.
specifically.
Yeah. But it also could just be a thing of like, hey, like for people that are not familiar with Dolphin, new people that just don't venture out, like I think Levy, you mentioned that don't venture outside of Steam, or maybe that was Eli.
Yeah, that was me.
That was him, not me. Wrong person.
Or
Close enough.
maybe not necessarily people who don't venture outside of Steam, but more so people that don't necessarily get into emulators, and this might be their way to kind of gateway them into emulators through
like-
that. So
Yeah, true. Because
I
if
don't
they
know.
don't understand the hype, and it's like people are saying, "Oh, I use Dolphin Emulator," and they don't know jack shit about it, but all of a sudden it's on Steam. It's like, "Oh, now I get to see what the hype is all about." Download. Oh, I hate this.
Oh, I need to find ISOs. Where do I find those?
Is that the gun?
That's what's gonna happen. Is that you're gonna have to venture outside and go find some ISO of Wind Waker or some shit.
The ESO.
That's what I have to do.
Is this ESO gonna ruin my Iveega power supply?
Look, I think the big N is gonna look into all of your accounts first, suggesting that you should do the right thing by looking for some ISO files. Look, I didn't advocate for shit. I don't know these guys.
I'm so
yeah.
sorry.
Oh, he knows us very well.
It's like I'm sorry, honey. There will be no paycheck. I'm going to jail. I emulated a game onto.
Sorry, Dom. When the big N sends Ryu Hayabusa after you for homebrewing a console or something, you know.
Well,
Can't say we
my
didn't
response to
warn you.
Nintendo
Ryu
is,
Hayabusa. No, he's gonna sing Kirby at you.
they're
He's
gonna-
gonna sing Kirby after
You guys know the thing I'm referencing, right?
I think so, yeah.
This is the story about I think he was in Japan. I can't remember if it was America or Japan, but
I think
he
it
was
was
the
in
guy who was
America.
famous for homebrewing the Nintendo DS.
And
And Nintendo are like super mega like sociopathic with this stuff, and they're like, all right, we're gonna send a bunch of people to like
Yeah.
stalk you and question you and go to your house, and like, okay, that's creepy.
Or
That's
like
fucking
this.
weird.
Oh yeah, Erica talked about that. I remember.
Isn't there a thing where it's like a child? I don't know if this is true or not, but a child in like a third world country made a Switch out of cardboard, and Nintendo sent a cease and desist.
I,
Is that at the corner of the
I
cardboard
hope that's
market?
fake.
I hope so too. Cause
Do we
it
all
just
remember how
sounds
dumb
so
the Labo was? Am I the only one?
Yes.
I forgot the
That's
level
still-
just before Lebby mentioned it.
That was still the funniest thing, because I
I
remember we
didn't
were
say
talking
that.
about. I'm like, you just can't convince me. I know we're sidetracking,
How
It's
But
a
then
piece of
again-
cardboard. You cannot convince me to pay $60 for cardboard.
When
Or
are we
better
gonna emulate the Labo? Actually, tell me when that emulation is coming.
I don't even know what you play on the Labo.
No, there was
Cardboard?
there's a Labo emulator. It's called Unpacking. You can get
You don't
it on
need
Steam.
you don't need to emulate Labo. You know how to get it free? Go to a fucking dumpster diving. That's how you
Yeah, I was
get
gonna
it.
say I got a box
There
right
you
here.
go.
I guess I
Here's
got
how
it.
you do it. Here's how you do it. You just go and grab some boxes and just make it yourself. Congratulations, I'm a Gundam.
Better yet, you could two-fold it. You know, you order some pizza and you get the cardboard from the pizza, so you get to eat
Shit,
and freaking play with
Nice.
An
cardboard.
insane deal.
Get grease stains on my console and controller. What a great way to
Okay.
dirty up my stuff.
Since we're
Don't
okay,
tell them the life hack tech.
I know that we're divulging away from this conversation, but it's like I've noticed another thing. They did cardboard, and then they did an RC car that you control with the Switch.
They did not.
Yes, they did.
They did.
It's the Mario Kart one. Yes, they did.
Oh fuck! I remember now. God damn.
Yeah, like they're doing this shit. It's like you could. It's like you can make
It's
your
pretty
own
funny.
track. You can make your own tracks at home with the items and everything. You just gotta buy the Mario or Luigi kit, and you're good to go. Okay, cool. I could just go buy an RC car and do that myself.
Can we move on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's.
That was it. That's all I gotta say. Yeah,
it's
we're
time to
moving
stop
on.
thinking outside the box.
Anyway.
Oh, fuck off.
Oh, right. Just like that, it's ruined. The podcast is over.
That's it. I'm out. But
All right.
Stick a fork in me. I'm done.
So,
Thank God.
all the sidetracking aside, right? Jokes aside and stuff like that. Does anybody have any final thoughts on video upscaling, backwards compatibility, or even emulation that they want to share before we wrap things up tonight?
I think
Here's
I got
why
everything
the
I
shitty
wanted out
acronyms
to.
just die.
I'm excited for. I hope the DuckStation guy does the PS3 emulator next, even though it's doing alright.
good.
No, put him in Vita.
You know,
Is he already
do
working
bingo.
on that?
No, but he should be because we have nothing else to work with.
you know, I want to see improvements on that original Xbox emulator.
The Xbox
sure.
has it rough.
That'd be cool. Aside from that, like some of the other console or handhelds and one other console that I mentioned before, so Saturn and DS, 3DS. That'd be cool to see get like improvements on. But aside from that, like for someone like me who was willing enough to spend money on a video upscaler, I'd love to see more cheaper alternatives, so that way, for people that are hesitant about like trying out that stuff due to pricing, would be willing enough to try out a device like that if it's just simple as plug and play without all the cool bells and whistles that aren't really necessary for most people. So that's what I'd like to see. And of course, backwards compatibility that's actually good always.
For sure.
I
Absolutely.
think on a serious note, we just need to find ways to simplify how emulators for current consoles and portables work, because with some of these newer emulators, it's a bit of a trying process just to get them to work, because it's not just like the important system files like a BIOS you'd have to get the game itself, you need some kind of decryption key, and I'm like, why not just the game? Why not just have it make it work right then and there? Like the BIOS is one thing, but just make it easy to run the game. We shouldn't have to jump through like maybe 15 hoops just to get something to run on something like Yuzu or PSS3.
Because fuck you, you need to be online. And yeah.
Sorry, it's a live
Oh
service.
shit! Speaking of, where's my Avengers? Because free shit today. Their last patch ever.
Oh yeah,
Just
I
giving
think the
everything,
definitive
basically.
edition on Steam
Yeah.
is being sold for like $8.
I'll give them this. You know what? They may shut it down, but hey, I don't have to pay for those. I feel sorry for dudes that did pay for those costumes, but fuck it, free is free.
Anyway,
Another thing.
If they shut it down, you can still play it offline, right?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, you can still play offline. They
Probably.
said.
I was
Which
gonna
I'll
say
give them.
probably not.
What is it? Before I let Dom go, one other thing about Nintendo I need to bring up, and this is very important. What is the game? the Nouveau guys, yeah, they wanted and Nintendo
Oh,
agreed. I
shit,
don't know why
that's
Nintendo agreed with this, but they wanted DRM Nintendo Switch games, and I don't know if that started yet, but I don't like
Yeah,
that
not too
decision.
long ago, those guys outright released an ebook explaining the quote unquote dangers of emulation.
Oh,
Fuck
please.
that.
Oh,
The dangers of our
Jesus.
corporate wallets.
Yeah, fuck whoever made Lenovo.
The Nouveau themselves.
I mean,
Yeah.
let's be honest. Anti-piracy has always been a waste of time.
Always.
Yeah.
There's
Do-
nothing. People
do-
get through it in a week at most.
Do the thing that I think it was From Software, right, where they did the unkillable Black Knight in one of the Dark Souls games.
I think it was like the very first time the game came out, and I think it's been patched out since then or something.
Yeah,
I
do
think it was
shit like
before
that.
they hit the one patch.
It was. I thought it was before Street Date. I thought that was the thing with that.
Yeah, the idea was if you didn't have the patch they had intended for day one owners, you'd still have to deal with that in Global Black Knight.
That's
Oh,
funny.
interesting.
Yeah, do more shit like that. I guess I don't know, like.
I think
this is also
Spyro had something too. This is a fun fact.
Mhm.
I think at some point, if you somehow got far enough in the game, it would delete your file after like the final boss or something.
You know, you would get to the final boss,
Then it
boot
would
you
stop,
back
right?
all the way to the intro, and it would delete your save.
Yep.
That's
Oh.
amazing.
Also, the fairy will tell you she thinks you're playing an illegal copy, and she warns you.
And I think they were doing that shit as early as Earthbound because there was a point where, like, if you were playing a pirated copy, you would get a shit ton of enemy spawns, and I think the game would eventually crash.
This is starting to sound like Serious Sam.
Yeah, that's actually what
Oh,
happened.
yeah, tell us about Serious Sam.
If you pirate the game, there's like a super unkillable scorpion that will just hunt you down the entire game.
That was
Like,
the 3rd
I've
game,
seen
right?
that. Yeah,
Yeah, it's Serious Sam 3.
good way to troll people.
You
Yeah.
can learn all the speedrun strats.
You'll be running all right.
Better learn how to break bounds. But
Break the
Better
walls
learn to
down.
Better learn to strafe jump.
yeah. So anyway, sidetracking and stuff like that aside, I hope you guys all had fun talking about this subject. But
Yeah.
I love
before
you.
I end it, I got to do outros, of course, and I will just kind of go from there. So first up, Daybreaker, where can we find you, good sir?
You can find me most active on Twitter for the most part. That's pretty much where I update things. You can also find me on my YouTube channel at Daybreaker Rein. I've been uploading a bunch of the stream archives that I have neglected to upload. So those are going up. And yeah, I've been trying to get back into streaming, and I'm streaming on Glimish. So you can find me at Daybreaker Rein on glimish.tv.
Awesome. Up next, we have James. Where can we find you, good sir?
Everywhere and nowhere, usually on Twitter at DevHunterJames.
Wait a minute, you're not branded.
Not
Team
yet.
Wario.
Not yet.
We are each other.
Where is the other half?
I think he just platinum Resident Evil 4. That's about all I know.
Anyway, next up we got Drillbit. Where can we find you, sir?
Yeah, you could find the Girlbit777 on Twitter. That's really where I'm only active at.
Alrighty. After that, we got Mr. Gamma. Where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Gamma Alias.
Alrighty. After that, we got Mr. Iveega.
YouTube, Twitter, Iveega. Blame Dom for my name change.
I didn't do shit.
Bullshit! I blame you! But thank you at the same
Didn't do
time.
nothing.
Yeah, I didn't do nothing.
But I also thank you, though, because I'm tired of people asking me, why are you Amish? You shouldn't be on here.
Oh, that is a very good question. Maybe you're like a cyberpunk Amish. I don't know.
You're like a Zoomer Amish.
no,
You realize the
put it-
internet's important.
Put it this way. John Wick, I was excommunicado from the Amish community.
In the
They're
new
trying to hunt me
cyber-
down.
Hey, hold
In
on.
the new
Don't,
cyberpunk game, are they going to have an Amish?
don't compare him.
gang?
Don't compare him to Cyberpunk. He actually works.
Exactly.
Oh,
Oh, come on.
God damn it.
They built themselves that grave at that point.
Anyway, next up we got Kaneki. Where can we find you, good sir?
You can find me only on YouTube and Twitter / in Google order. Fuck Twitch. They can suck bag of dicks. And yeah, I'm gonna go back to playing Tekken on my 3DS.
What'd they
Thanks,
do to you?
Nintendo. What?
What'd they do to you on Twitch?
Oh, Twitch? Well, I don't like their policy. That's all.
Their policies are trash.
And so are YouTube's. YouTube's are pretty ass too.
Yeah.
I mean, well, if you're a girl, you know.
Yeah, but at least
Not
I
so
can
much of an
stream
issue.
video game music on YouTube. I can't do that on Twitch. You know, video
Yeah.
game music, not copyrighted music.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could even get taken down for even playing video game music. What are the odds?
No fun allowed.
Fun? What is that? Anyway, Chaos, where can we find you, good sir?
You can find me on YouTube and Twitter at Kaptain Kaos. You can also find me on Instagram at Enigmatic Arts, where I post my art stuff. Also have a print shop where I sell my prints, Enigmatic Prints on Etsy.com. And that's about it.
Alrighty, and last but not least, Mr. Singh Long, where can we find you?
You could probably find me on Twitter over at Singh_Long, assuming if I ever dig out my account because I'm too much of a lazy ass to post anything.
Bet. Alright.
Doesn't post and doesn't play games. I see how it is.
Okay.
You shut your mouth.
Damn, Reapers was right about him.
Yeah. Anyway, you all know me as BioDevil_Dom. You can find me on YouTube if you're not watching this on YouTube, Twitter, and yeah, that's about it. I don't really touch my Twitch account anymore at all, really, just because I don't really like the policies, and I don't stream, although I really want to get back into streaming, but it's not going to be for a while, considering I'm moving soon again. But
Is it back to the States?
I wish. I fucking wish.
Damn.
I haven't started the rescue operation yet.
Everyone started GoFundMe.
I fucking wish. If not the States, straight to Japan, because that's the only place I want to be. But that's neither here or there. I hope everyone enjoyed today's podcast. We look forward to seeing you on the next one. And if I'm not mistaken, our next one is going to be a smaller one regarding some of the Silent Hill stuff. That I definitely know is going to be with Chaos for sure. So me and Chaos are really gonna dig into some of that stuff in particular. But
Yeah.
that being said, we hope you all enjoyed, and we will see you all in the next one.
Jesus
Take it
loves
easy.
you.
Yeah.
Right?
Jesus loves you.